Hello, everybody. I'm Charlie Tolhurst, and welcome to Charlie Tolhurst Show for today, the 28th of August, the final one of the summer holidays before the schools go back. And yes, I am live on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter tonight. We're going to be going over the best of both worlds with the news, reacting to the latest headlines, and chatting about some of the best news stories throughout the week. I'm joined by Labour Party supporter Zach Chambers for today's edition of the show. Hello, Zach.
Hi, Charlie. Hello, mate.
Zach, I'm going to start off with the hot headline this week. And this week's hot headline is going to be not about Afghanistan for one change, but about some news that I think a lot of students are going to be wanting to know about, because the NHS is apparently drawing up plans to vaccinate 12 to 15-year-olds ahead of the school return in England, which is due to start next week. And Zach, what do you make of this news story that was being teased on one of the Britain's famous newspapers last week?
I think it's a good thing. It's clear that there is some people, 12, 15 youngsters, are spread of COVID. Obviously, they didn't get very much out of it in terms of the impact of it. But nevertheless, I think, they're doing it in America. It seems like it's going successful there. So I don't see an issue with the idea of vaccinating 12 to 15-year-olds in principle. I think, everyone that could get that should be eligible for vaccine should get a vaccine. 12 to 15 years old, as well.
I have to say, Zach, I'm going to say this now. I'm a little bit, again, this is another thing that I'm controversial of, because I don't understand where the JCVI evidence is. Is the JCVI surely released any evidence to say how comes this vaccine is effective for this age group? Because I do fear that there could be some kids who could get side effects from either the Pfizer or Moderna vaccine, and that for me could be a bit concerning, because if I had two kids, I wouldn't want them getting vaccinated until I know there's more data out to say that it's safe for this age group. What do you make of that?
I would think, Charlie, that the JCVI and the NHRA will provide the evidence for why they are vaccinating 12 to 15-year-olds. Like anything else, they wouldn't they wouldn't be doing it without reason. I'm sure they have the evidence in front of them and realizing why it's appropriate to be doing this. I honestly think that there will be the data there. They will have the evidence, the scientific evidence to doing it. As I said, in America, the CDC are recommending vaccinating 12 to 15-year-olds. I haven't heard much side effects there. I've not heard anything like significant or something like that, or anything reporting badly significant. So if there's nothing significant coming out and not being reported, then there's not much of an issue. We've known possible there may be the heart problem as well, that in the Pfizer's. It doesn't appear to be too serious at the moment. It's not affecting it. It seems to be very rare. We know that obviously they're not going to give the AstraZeneca out because that's only for over 40s and over, but very rare in young people, for those getting the blood clots and everything like that. So in other words, it doesn't. It seems to be safe. I think they got the evidence behind it. I think it. Obviously there is a bit more risks as you're more healthier and you're younger. But in all seriousness, Charlie, there doesn't appear to be anything serious happening. In fact, as I said, they're doing it in America. So what's the problem with doing it in the UK? I mean, it's working out there. It'll work out here.
I'm thinking about the sort of the children are not that severely at risk from getting seriously ill with COVID, and their chance of having hospitalization and death is far lower. I understand that children do spread this virus more. I get that. I get that at all. But the same as if you have a vaccine, you're going to reduce the risk of you getting it severe, but you can still pass it on. I mean, it's very easy to still do that. I mean, I think at the end of the day, children have to have personal choice, in my opinion. I personally would not give my children the vaccine unless I knew it was safe. I mean, at the end of the day, look, guys, please comment down below. Do you think children 12 to 15 should be forced to have this vaccine? Because I do fear mandatory vaccination is unfortunately going to start turning Britain much into a sovereign authoritarian state, indeed. But I just want to touch on this because later on we're going to be talking about booster injections. In terms of the return to school for students, do you think that schools should give consent to kids for them to be vaccinated ahead of the new term?
As far as I'm aware, Charlie, what I've heard from this is potentially the 12 to 15-year-olds is going to require parental permission anyway. So it's not like to be mandatory or you're going to be forced to have a jab in you or something like that. So it's not like that we're going to force people to take it. It's obviously going to be optional. It will be recommended to take it, but it's not like you're sticking a jab in and then you're going to be turned into a zombie, for example. It's the case of here's a jab. We recommend you take it. It will protect you. If you want, take it. And it's up to the parents to decide. I'm sure there'll be plenty of parents actually that think, I want to see my kids vaccinated. I'm sure there will be, Charlie. There will probably be. You'll probably find out that there will be a majority of people that will support this, and that they will recommend their kids take it. And I don't see the problem with that. If it's just another area of protection, then yeah. I mean, we're not. I can't see forcing people to mandatory take vaccines is going to happen for these sort of age groups. I can't see it, Charlie, unfortunately. Well, not unfortunately, but I can't see it happening.
I suppose the scientific advisors, the guys at the SAGE committee and the should I say the SAGE committee for scientists who love being addicted to vaccination and mandatory stuff, that I think in a way they probably want to do this to keep kids in school in the long term and not give them a normal education. I think that's their view on this. So let me know, guys, down in the comments. As I said earlier, what do you make about vaccinating 12 to 15-year-olds? We're going to move on from the hot headline now to sports round. And I want to start, Zach, with the Formula One Belgian Grand Prix because, ouch. Ouch, indeed. This has to be probably, I'm going to say this now, one of the most failed F1 races out there because we had a couple of laps today and then it all of a sudden stopped because of the weather. And Zach, I have to tell you, the weather in Spa today was absolutely horrendous.
Oh, Charles, it was the best race I ever watched. God, I mean the best race we watched because there was actually no race. That's a turn up for the books, isn't it? Being rained out after about 2-3 laps. It's not very often that you see a race rained out. It was extraordinary. It was like 5 hours, 6 hours of just like sitting on the sofa waiting for something to happen. Oh, 4 hours actually. I just remember the race started at 2 and finished about 6, just before 6ish.
Wow.
Wasn't it? You don't even call it a race. You just call it a reigns, as I call it. But yeah, if you really want to know what the proper race was like, let's go to Saturday, for example. Charlie, it was this is really dictated. Qualifying really dictated the race results today, apart from a few skirmishes that happened just before the race, before the wet parade started, shall I say? I'm not going to call it a race. I'm going to call it a wet parade or something like that. So Saturday qualifying was wet and was Verstappen on pole, ultimately the victor because all he did was drive around the safety car for a couple of laps and sit in the pit lane whilst they ran out of time. And obviously, oh my goodness me, Charlie, how on earth did George Russell managed to get in second place and eventually a podium. I mean, watching it the other day, I mean, you'd think he was already in a Mercedes, for goodness sake. You don't even, in fact, you didn't even need to be in a Mercedes to beat a Mercedes. That was quite something. You know, I couldn't believe it, Charlie. I could not. I was genuinely shocked. First podium. It's not even a Mercedes car. It's in a Williams. Just shows you something how that boy could go out get that Mercedes next year. Lewis Hamilton third. He got beaten by George Russell. What can you say to that? Well, could we have that for years to come potentially? We don't know yet. I have to say, Ricardo will probably be pleased with what's happened. Fourth position as well. I think that was as well. Yeah. Great, obviously great qualifying. Managed to get through the results today. That was incredible stuff, actually, as well. And let's see as well. Vettel fifth, good result as well. Qualifying, very good from Ocon. Sixth, Gasly. Seventh, Ocon. And it was supposed to be, I believe, it was supposed to be Sergio Perez in eighth in qualifying and starting race in eighth. He ended up in 20th because he ended up off onto the way to the grid. So he, rather than finishing eighth, which we were supposed to do, he ended up finished 20th. So everyone ninth was put up one. So that was the Clerk, Latifi 9th, 10th for Sainz. Double points for Williams, by the way, I should point out. Alonso 11th, 12th Bottas. No points for that Mercedes driver there after a 5-place grid penalty for his little shunt in Hungary. 13th for Giovinazzi. Norris 14th. Honestly, he could have that qualifying could have been special for him had he not had that quite bad crash at Eau Rouge.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, which has been Eau Rouge has been an absolute has been a place this week of quite nasty accidents. Just look at the W Series race, for example, where they had at least 6 cars go off there.
Yeah,
thank God it all.
That was a horrible accident. That one in the W Series. I'm so grateful to see Ayala, Agrin, and also Biskavissa walk out of that crash without majorly serious injuries as well.
Yeah. So that's what happened there. Tsunoda 15th, Schumacher 16th, Mazepin 17th. Mazepin got the fastest lap of the race, but obviously got no points about it. Which is quite the turn of the books. Stroll 18th, Raikkonen 19th, Sergio Perez 20th as the last. Now, I should point out, Charlie, as well, that meant there was half points because we only barely got a couple laps in today, or what was available. It meant half points. And the last time a half points was awarded, I think, before today was, I think, Malaysia 2009, which just tells you how consistent these races have been finishing. And we got half points for the first time for so long now. Hamilton has 3-point lead in the championship over Verstappen now after Verstappen's win. Norris is still third, Bottas is still fourth, Perez is fifth, Carlos Sainz is sixth, Leclerc 7th, 8th, Ricciardo 9th, Gasly 10th, Ocon ahead of Alonso 11th, Vettel 12th, Tsunoda 13th, 14th, Stroll, 15th, George Russell overtaking Nicholas Latifi, Raikkonen 17th, 18th, Giovinazzi, 19th and 20th for Schumacher, Mazepin, respectively as well. So, yeah, we had today a race that wasn't a race. It was more of a rain parade. I don't think we'll get this at Zandvoort next weekend, Charlie. I don't think.
Can I just say, I am very gutted that the FIA did not hold this race tomorrow. I mean, you listened to so many of the team bosses saying, we could run this race tomorrow, give it a go. But it's just the fans today should have been treated to a race. We should have had, there was just no way today that the race was going to go ahead with the conditions, the way they were. Seeing Lando crash yesterday in qualifying, to see a red flag should have been brought out a lot earlier. Sebastian Vettel was certainly not very happy on the radio after that crash. it shows you that Formula One this weekend, I'm a little bit disappointed with them, actually. And I'm not saying that because of the weather.
Yeah.
I'm saying that because of crashes that I've seen today, then allowing the drivers to go out after about a 2-hour rain delay and then red flag it again. It's not what it's just, that's not right. That's damaging the reputation of the sport, I think. I think they should have just gone ahead, tried it tomorrow. They would have been able to put, even if it was only a short, a half distance race, get something for the fans in, because I do feel honestly that this weekend is probably one of the most disappointing I've seen in Formula One for a long time. But all I can say is we just have to move on.
Yeah, Charlie. I think the problem is there's two problems, Charlie. One, you're holding a racetrack basically on a hill, because that's where Spa-Francorchamps is. It's basically on a mountains of hills, right into the centre of heaven, basically, where all the clouds are. So you're going to get this big rainfall as well. And two, I don't think it would be logistically possible to do it tomorrow, based on what FIA said, because you would have to, all the basically the marshals or basically volunteers for the weekend are working, and you don't want to get them away from work for no reason to lose their pay way or something like that. So then you have to find hundreds of new marshals. Then also there's a logistical problem as well, Charlie, in terms of trying to basically rush everyone to finish tomorrow, because there's a race next week as well, Charlie, in Zandvoort. So there's a few problems on that front. But well, it sucks. It sucks. I think the FIA did their best to interpret the rules, bend the rules a little bit, and suspend rules so that they could get a race in. But unfortunately, the weather won today, and the weather was not. They just said no. We don't want to do it. We don't want you lot racing. So, it sucks, and it's not often that you see this sort of thing. But it happened, and we move on to next week, where the championship is still thoughtfully very close, and it's going to be a lot exciting to see 70,000 Dutch fans each day from Friday to Sunday next week, Charlie.
Yeah, I just want to say, whilst we've been on air over the last, whilst we're doing the sports round, there's been some breaking news coming out regarding politics, and Nicola Sturgeon, who has just been announced. It's been announced that she is now self-isolating after a close contact tested positive with COVID. Zach, what's your thoughts on this?
Well, that's interesting. I've only just heard about that. So, yeah, that sucks. Very unfortunate for her. She's doing the right thing, obviously self-isolating. At least she's doing the right thing. Obviously, hope she's negative.
Yeah, I thought I'd just update you that, because it's only just broken through whilst we're on air that Nicola Sturgeon, who is the First Minister of Scotland, is now self-isolating after a close contact has tested positive for coronavirus. We're just going to get up that right now for you whilst we're here. It's on the daily, just coming up on the daily record. The First Minister has taken a PCR test after being contacted by the NHS Test Protect. Now, it's a close contact with someone who's tested positive. She's taken a PCR test after she's pinged. She's had a notification to say she's been in line with someone as well who's tested positive. And she is isolating immediately. We'll get back to you on the news of Nicola Sturgeon. Also, another celebrity as well, also tested positive over the weekend, Vernon Kaye, who was on I'm a Celebrity last year. And Zach, what's your thoughts on Vernon Kaye testing positive?
Yeah, that's a shame, because he was supposed to present this morning for Monday to Thursday this week, and that's obviously not going to happen now. He was also going to do some radio duties, from what I read, on Radio 2, but obviously that's not going to happen now. Unfortunate. It sounds like he's doing all right. Hope for the best.
Yeah, so that's the news there on COVID diagnosis. I wish Vernon Kaye a speedy recovery, and I hope Nicola Sturgeon is all in one piece. We'll keep you updated on that news. But we're going to move on now from Sports Round to this interesting news report. I'm going to now talk about In the Spotlight now. That's going to be moved actually from later in the show to now, because I want to discuss some news stories. We're going to talk now about the UK and about, are we heading for a refugee crisis in this country, with evacuations taking place from Kabul now expected and now really complete from Afghanistan, where there has been a huge explosion from where ISIS have taken over. There has been a lot of reports of people being sent back to other countries and being rescued. Zach, what's your opinion? Do you think the UK is heading for a refugee crisis?
Are we heading for a refugee crisis? I don't think we are. I think, there's a cap on 5,000 this year. Next year there's going to be probably about 15,000. I wouldn't call that a crisis at all. I think the likes of Germany would probably accept more. The US would accept the majority of them. And I'm sure there'll be neighbouring countries, Turkey maybe, accepting a majority of them as well. Not sure about France. Spain probably would accept quite a lot. So I think there'll be, as long as countries accept quite a few, I don't think we are heading for refugee crisis. I mean, think of Canada, for example. Probably will accept a lot of refugees as well. But no, if we're trying to, are we heading for refugee? Probably not. I suppose we'll be accepting refugees, but I wouldn't call it a crisis. I mean, there is going to be a refugee crisis. I think the country's got to accept their fair share. But whether we get the crisis or not, probably not all of it at all. Not even that much, I think. It will be burden between Germany, Canada, USA, and probably the neighbouring countries, really, to be fair, Charlie. So, no, not in my opinion.
But I have to say this, Zach, though, because the problem I have is the border crisis is now at its highest level ever, with over 800 migrants crossing, just crossed about 5 days ago. Last week, we had a number of about 800 migrants. And the problem is that a lot of these people do not qualify as refugees. And I feel like this crisis, on top of the number of people coming back from Afghanistan who have been stranded out there, is going to mean that these people are going to have to be homed. And you look at, it was an article out the other day saying Sadiq Khan is actually planning like infrastructure and accommodation to house these refugees in London.
I mean, yeah. I mean, I think that's quite nice, actually, to be fair. I mean, Manchester and like Liverpool are going to be welcoming refugees in open arms and stuff like that, as well. I read there was about 30 councils who were refusing to accept Afghan refugees. Shame on them, I think. But yeah, you make a good point about the border, and the Dover, the migrants there, 800. It's a terrible lot, Charlie. That does, I think your point is fair. It does create a problem. You have that and Afghans coming over as well. But you could kind of blame the migrant crisis on a various range of things, Charlie. UK, the French, whereas I suppose there may well be controlled legal routes for refugees and safe routes as well for them to take as well to get over and get onto shores. So yeah, I see your point. I can't see that happen instantly though, Charlie. This where there's going to be problems with dinghy boats and stuff like that involving Afghans. I can't see that happening at the moment. I mean, any other illegal immigrants, it's a problem as it is already, Charlie. That's, to be fair, can't deny that. So yeah, if we're going to see the effect, we're not seeing it at the moment, Charlie. I don't think.
Yeah, there's been a big problem, Zach, out in Afghanistan. Because I want to move on now and touch on this attack in Kabul. There's been a huge ISIS-K attack that has killed over 70 people during the week. And it's very clear that the situation in Kabul is actually worsening by the second. And it's clear now that in the United States, Joe Biden is starting to get pressurized by even the mainstream media. And there was reports out the other day that he actually ended up standing on the podium and actually clambered his fists on his head and actually put his hands on his head in frustration. I mean, seriously, Zach, I have to accept this here. Do you accept that Joe Biden has made mistakes with that hand on his handling of the Afghanistan crisis?
I mean, no doubtably, you can argue that there's a legitimate argument about that. You could argue that the way he's handled it, you know, the pulling out of troops from Afghanistan has gone pretty horrendously. You could argue that, you know, what happened to the intelligence? How did the intelligence not catch the Taliban advancing so fast across Afghanistan? You could argue that the US has not done enough to help those Afghans who, you know, interpreters that have basically helped them all along the way through it, and they're not enough. They're not saving enough of them. You can argue that about this. The bombing, though, or the suicide bombing by ISIS-K, which they have claimed responsibility for at Kabul. I have to say, first of all, Charlie, it's honestly such a shame. And it's just heartbreaking to see service members lose their life. The UK and US, I think there's about 13 that have lost their in the US, about 2 4 here in the UK. It's very sad, and you know, hearts go out to them. The services they produce. I mean, like I've seen some of the youngest 20 die of this, Charlie. It's so sad. But yeah, I think the response to these bombings by the Biden administration has been pretty good so far. I mean, they've prevented, I think, a serious one from happening today, for example. There was rumours that there's going to be an ISIS-K bombing 24, 36 hours. That was reported yesterday. I think it's clear the US defence and military have managed to prevent that from happening, which is good. But going back to that press conference there, where, you know, Biden had his head on his face, yeah, you know, you could tell he was deeply frustrated, Charlie. He was deeply upset, frustrated. I think he had pride in his head, Charlie. That's the main thing. I wouldn't say this is, you know, frustration, yes. Upsetness, yes. I would say no more than that, really.
Yeah, it's interesting. Biden certainly, for me, has failed this crisis in Afghanistan. And I remain a question, to be honest with you. What do you think below, guys? Do you think Joe Biden is fit enough to be president of the United States? Please comment down below. I'd like to hear your opinions on that. But I'm going to play for you a video now by GB News host Alistair Stewart, who was actually returned over this weekend onto the GB News sofa, which is great to see. This is what he had to say about the Afghanistan crisis. As he said, the world has never been unstable as it is now. Have a listen to this.
But with Afghanistan, it seems to me that there isn't an upside. The 2020 Trump deal with the Taliban, not with the then Afghan government, but their sworn enemies, kicked in. As Allied troops withdrew, it proved to be a noisy starting gun for the Taliban to sweep across Afghanistan in a matter of days, seizing the capital and putting 2 decades of progress in jeopardy, not least the rights of women to be women and young girls to be educated. A virtual G7, the 7 biggest economies in the world, failed to persuade the United States to extend the grace period for evacuating those in danger. Our people, their people, and the Afghans who've risked everything to help us these last 20 years. Boris Johnson looked shamed and embarrassed. Former senior military types were brutally critical. MPs across the spectrum were angry, not least MPs on his own side. An operation reminiscent of the Berlin airlift swung into action, but even those huge transport planes have their limitations. An around-the-clock airlift has impressed, but as it draws to a close, it seems that over 1,000 of our former friends, at least, will be left behind, and perhaps more than 100 Brits. They're now awaiting the worst. But behind these sensational pictures, some deeper truths have emerged, have they not? Joe Biden's embraced his sworn enemy Donald Trump's America First mantra. In trade, it's tricky, but in foreign policy, it is potentially fatal. As China told Taiwan, be afraid. When conflict comes, America won't. Biden made NATO, or significant parts of it, look impotent. Here, the special relationship looked especially pathetic. And in the last 48 hours, the Taliban's Afghan enemies, ISIS-K, struck at the airport. Well, America this morning and overnight says it's taken out a top leader, but the fighters remain. Civil war unfolds in Afghanistan. The US looks the other way. We have a more destabilized world than ever. Allies suspicious of each other, great democracies impotent before a US president determined to put his country first. That fresh civil war in Afghanistan, but more importantly, the return of a training ground and plotting place for the world's worst terrorists. Now, after the Second World War came the Cold War between communism and free markets, autocracy and democracy. Democracy won in Berlin in 1989. Then came the Gulf War shortly after that, with the United States and her allies putting Saddam Hussein in his place. And of course, in 2001, on 9/11, the World Trade Center towers fell to terror attacks from the sky. And we learned what the new world conflict was. Democracy against terrorism and jihad. The old Soviet Union had wanted its slice of the world and to support communism where it emerged. Saddam wanted oil and regional influence. Jihadis want jihad, an open-ended war against the infidels. And that's us, unless you're a Muslim. That's the new challenge. With Biden's America in effect ducking out, safe from coast to coast, where does it leave the rest of us? That is our big question today.
Thank you there to Alistair Stewart for his little monologue section, should I say, on GB News. Zach, what did you make of Alistair's comments about Afghanistan and about the withdrawal of troops from the United States?
Oh. I thought it was fair. You know, looking at it, Charlie, this is going to affect the West for many years to come now. They're going to look at this in mostly disgrace, really, if we're going to be honest, Charlie. It's not going to be a pretty look in the West. You could say, you know, despite all the efforts by, you know, the UK as well to help this, you could argue that they possibly failed on a level as well, in some ways, and that they've also played this part in the failure. Unfortunately, you could argue, but yeah, I agree with most of the comments he actually made.
Yeah,
I think the West is going to look like this. They're going to be pretty shamed, and they're no longer look like the superpower that they were. And you know, the trust of allies would have been lost. I think, Charlie, they would have been lost, and that's not a good look for trying to work together in the future to come up with solutions for this and other conflicts, because it's not going to look. They're not going to trust the likes of America to really find the right answers.
I agree with what Alistair said. I think it's clear that the Taliban have now taken pretty much control of Kabul, and I feel the Americans have got a big decision to make. The UK and United States relationship certainly isn't looking great anymore, and we are meant to be close allies with the United States. We're meant to do trade with them. A lot of the time, the United States is a close friend of ours, but I just feel with this Kabul attack, I feel like the blame lies responsibly for pulling troops out on Joe Biden, and I'd even have to say Boris Johnson as well a little bit for the way he's handled this. It's been very interesting, this debate on Afghanistan. I'm sure it's going to continue on the news for the next few days, and I really think that the news has been dominated over the last couple of weeks by this. It's clear that more will be done to debate this issue out in Afghanistan. Was it right that pulling your troops out early was the right decision? Or was it right that you actually evacuate people? That is what we need, what you will be saying. So if you comment down below, please, how do you think both Boris Johnson and Joe Biden have both handled the Afghanistan operation, please let me know down in the comments. But stay within the spotlight now. This is a big segment today because there's so much to talk about. Booster vaccinations are now next. Now, Zach, in Israel, they have started off offering booster vaccinations to their population after it's believed that the second dose of COVID-19 vaccine protection starts to wane off after about 6 months. Do you think the UK should try that come September?
Be honest, yes, I think they should. They should do it for all ages. Like what they do in America now, where they're going to have everyone is going to be eligible for a booster after 6 months, or the third dose, as they say. In Israel, it looks like they're offering it there, and they're going to basically restrict people's ability to do stuff if they don't get the third jab. That looks like that's going to go that way in Israel. So, yeah, I think if you look at the evidence, Charlie, you know, the vaccines are starting to wane after, say, only a couple months, even with 2 jabs, which is obviously a bit worrying. But it does support the evidence for taking out booster jabs. Now, obviously, as I said, in America, they're going to be doing this from September, offering booster jabs to anyone who's 8 months after their second, or it appears they may well go for 6 months, based on what I'm reading. And yeah, everyone will be eligible for that. The other thing is, I think, Charlie, is that if the evidence supports this, I mean, they're vaccinating 12 to 15-year-old, they're going to probably vaccinate 12 to 15-year-olds here. I think there will be a move so that everyone gets a third shot soon. I think the JCVI and MHRA should seriously consider that, personally, in my opinion, because if the evidence are on paper saying that a second dose starts waning your actual protection immunity by a certain percentage. I mean, it's very small amounts, but it's significant in case of getting the virus, Charlie. I think if the option is given a booster jab to actually increase that protection, put that way up, then I think they should, Charlie, in my opinion. I think they should do it for everyone. Obviously, there's going to be doing third booster shots from September. For the EU compromise, that anyone over 50, I believe, Charlie, are going to get booster shots eventually. From what I understand, I think it should be expanded to all ages. I don't think those who should be, going to be having a little bit of wage over the vaccine. I think it should be applied to everyone, not just certain age groups, in my opinion.
Okay. Yeah, I think the vaccination program will be expanded and they'll offer booster jabs. That's my view on this. I think we will certainly see booster jabs in the UK for booster vaccinations for the UK adults I think it'll start potentially next month as the schools go back. And as winter approaches, we will see the increase of the vaccine rollout program coming to the UK. So we're going to move on now from in the spotlight to Charlie's good news. Here we go again, guys. Charlie's good news is back. Positive news. We have got so much for this week. And I'm really excited because the content I've picked is actually very interesting. I want to start off with this, the future of flying. Now, this aircraft here is the future of flying. A hybrid plane, you ask? Yes. Now, the aircraft is a milestone in the race to decarbonise aviation, but net zero flights remain some way off yet. Now, in the race for net zero, aviation will remain a formidable obstacle. The sector is not only one of the world's fastest growing sources of emissions before the pandemic, but also one of the hardest to decarbonise. With the absence of ready-to-go green alternatives, the jet engine is the only viable short-term option to cleaning up the air as it for fly less. The good news is that low-cost carbon aviation is progressing. Evidence UK this week that they're a hybrid plane is conducting a series of demonstration flights between Exeter Airport and Cornwall Airport, Newquay, following a successful trial between Wick and Kirkwall in Scotland a fortnight ago. It is the first time an electric-powered plane has taken part in such tests. Now, the aircraft involves a modified 6-seater Cessna 337 aircraft, which is one James May sort of flown in a Top Gear episode many years ago, and with one battery-powered electric motor and one traditional combustion engine, meet Empire, the firm behind the plane, described the flights as an important first step to decarbonising regional air travel. And according to Empire, its hybrid plane uses about 30% less fuel than non-hybrid, but given the diminutive size of the aircraft, the modest saving highlights how much progress can still be made safe. The UK aviation industry is making a good promise to be net zero by 2050. So interesting news on the future of flying. Now, in Basildon Town Centre, I've noticed this across Basildon Town Centre myself after visiting the town, but there's actually been some artists have actually joined forces to create eye-catching art murals to brighten up town centre. Now, the Our Towns project by Basildon creative people and places has seen 8 works of art created, in each inspired by the area and a challenging, different, hard-hitting issue. A piece aiming to make women feel safe within the town has added to higher pavement as part of a £1.2 million project created by artist Michelle Curtis along with Women Together. The piece is aimed at sending a message of solidarity to the woman or the women across Basildon. So very interesting news there. And finally, this news here, Thanet, which is located in Margate, is named amongst one of the UK's most beautiful towns. Oh, that's amazing, isn't it? The seaside town scored highly based on its sandy beaches and popular amusements. Yes, Margate has been named amongst one of the most beautiful towns. The Kent seaside town ranked in the top 10 in research carried out by data specialists, an online casino called Slots Up. Popular places, popular UK coastal towns were rated on different factors, 6 different factors. Final score at 60. Margate landed in 9th place with score 15.8, thanks to its popular sandy beaches and popular amusements, including Dreamland in Margate as well. It's actually a very popular tourist destination, Margate, located in Kent. So, yeah, one of those tourist destinations that people love to go to is always a Kent beach. So that is my good news segment. We'll do it all again next week. And please, guys, I'd love you to send in your content, because I'll be rounding up again next week. It's really, really important that we get out there and do some research and educate ourselves more. But we're going to move on now from my good news to Charlie Asks. We still actually have a little bit of time left in the show, but I'm going to start with my Ask segment. And this segment is going to be about a question on politics this week. And I'm going to be talking about a journalist. My question is this week: Is Chris Wallace a good journalist for Fox News? And does Chris Wallace compare his interviews to like Andrew Neil in the United States? So my question this week is there similarities between Andrew Neil and Chris Wallace with the way their interviews are conducted? Now, Zach, I'm going to bring you in on this one because I'm sure you have watched both of these two conduct interviews on many political figures. What do you make of the two candidates in question?
Well, is Chris Wallace like Andrew Neil? Kind of. I'd say he's not really started to be like Andrew Neil, not because of the way he, changes politicians, but I suppose he's becoming a little less political than Andrew Neil. In some ways, Chris Wallace is like Andrew Neil in some way, very challenging, very grilled politicians. He's not like half of Fox News, which is like conservative leaning, proper bias or something like that. He seems to take down both sides of the aisle, wherever they are. If you're a Republican, if you're a Democrat, you cross Chris Wallace and you are basically a danger. I mean, you ask Donald Trump. He's had the back end of Chris Wallace before. Donald Trump doesn't like Chris Wallace because Chris Wallace challenges. And Chris Wallace, I think, is probably one of the best journalists that Fox News has. Probably because, he's actually a serious journalist. I mean, we look at like Shepard Smith a few years ago, who obviously left Fox News because he got deeply polarized. He thought Fox News was starting to get deeply polarized there. he was quite a serious tourist at the time. But I think Chris Wallace is. I think he takes both sides down very well. Andrew Neil's great. He's a fantastic interviewer. You know, he's a fantastic, amazing interviewer. And he's not afraid to take on anybody. The trouble with Andrew Neil recently is, obviously, since he joined GB News, he has been very political in his views. It's almost like he's bringing out his conservative-leaning views half the time. For example, I remember, let me get this up here, Charlie. He wrote something about the Scottish Screens or something like that.
Yes.
You know, I can't remember. Let me try and find it actually, because I think it was something very interesting actually.
Yeah.
He wrote. I've got to find it somewhere now. Here we go. Let me get it up here actually, because I think it's very important what he wrote, and this is how you could argue he's getting too political. He wrote this: anti-monarchy, anti-Britain, anti-Wales. As Nicola Sturgeon joins forces with the Green in a hunger for independence, what price will Scotland pay for giving power to eco-zealot Marxists? I don't think an impartial journalist would probably be writing that thing, in all fairness, Charlie. That's an argument where you could say that Andrew Neil is getting way too political for his liking. The fact that he wrote for the Daily Mail, which is a right-leaning magazine anyway as it is, Aaron Elliott is the chairman of Spectator, also right-leaning as well. You could argue this is too editorial and is not really fair with the fact that he's just calling the Greens eco-zealot Marxists without really giving, you know, it's an opinion, not a journalistic fact, Charlie. I like Andrew Neil when he challenges people, politicians, but this sort of, I mean, you could argue this is really partisan and really not. No wonder why he doesn't get to interview Nicola Sturgeon and the Greens this day. I think if I read somewhere actually, the Scottish Green leader. By the way, the Scottish Green has gone into government. By the way, the SNP in the coalition, sort of kind of coalition girl. Andrew Neil was labelled hard right by the co-leader of the Green, the Scottish Green Party, extreme and hard right. As a response to this, I would say Andrew Neil leans conservatively. If you're going to ask him that one, when he writes about neo-Marxism, I mean that's just opinion, not that's not a journalistic fact. But it's stuff like that sometimes you think, oh, maybe Chris White is better on some of these things. Where Andrew Neil is now turning to the old grumpy man himself of being partisan and being too conservative to even for only one side to even interview him. I mean, trust me, when Andrew Neil can do an interview on television, he's very good at it. When he's offline and sort of laying his pins out there, doesn't come across as very balanced. Let's just say that, Charlie.
I think, Zach, I'm going to say here, this is my view on both of them. I think both are interesting journalists. I know Andrew Neil sort of tends to write up opinions, like he'll write for the Spectator magazine, he'll write for Daily Mail, he'll write for whatever magazine that you can find, whatever newspaper column you can find. He'll write and have his opinion. But the point is with Andrew Neil, he is a ferocious political interviewer. So is Chris Wallace. They both hold people to account, and that's what I like. They are very fair in their interviews. They are not like some other people, like, I don't know, GMB, Piers Morgan. I don't know whether he's like that, but you got some people like on the BBC, people on Sky, who just shout over each other. And I watched they're like people like you got like Charlotte Hawkins and Raniva Singh from GMB, who will interview an MP and then just shout over them and interrupt each other. It's not like that with Chris Wallace and Andrew Neil. They hold people to account and they do the interview so fairly. And I think, Zach, wouldn't you agree with that?
I mean, yeah. I mean, Piers Morgan, for example, he'd shout over anybody. And really, to be fair, Charlie, if you're a Labour politician, you're a Conservative politician, he'd shout at anybody, so he gets his own ego ahead of anyone else. But that's Piers Morgan's view. He always has views, always has interesting opinions. And yeah, you know, Piers Morgan is not like, he's very challenging. You can't deny that. He's not in. He's challenging in a different way to Kerry likes with Chris Wallace or Andrew Neil. You know, I suppose Chris Wallace, you could give him. He's got a little bit of balance. Piers Morgan, and sometimes when he leaned to Andrew Neil recently, he's not really. I mean, Andrew Neil, when he balanced him on screen, as I said, he's very good at interviewing. But when it's online and stuff like that, and writing his own opinions, he does tend to show his conservative right-wing opinions as well. So yeah, that's how I see it.
Yeah, well, I'm going to play for you some quick highlights of Chris Wallace interviewing Anthony Blinken on his show on Fox News Sunday. This is what he had to say as he grilled Blinken on Biden's Afghanistan comments. Have a listen to this.
Mr. Secretary, welcome back to Fox News Sunday. Thanks for having me, Chris. Let's get the latest on the evacuation effort. How many people have we evacuated from Kabul in the last 24 hours, in the last week since the Taliban took Kabul? And why did the administration decide to get U.S. airlines to participate in the evacuation?
Chris, thanks very much. Last 24 hours, about 8,000 people on about 60 flights evacuated from Kabul airport. Since this effort began at the end of July, about 30,000 people all told on our military flights and on charter flights that we've helped to organize and get out of the airport. We've now asked, through authority that the president has, airlines to help participate in moving people not out of Kabul, but from these third country sites where we're taking them as we finish processing them, going through security checks. We've reached agreements with about 24 countries over 4 continents who are now helping or are soon going to help with the transit of people out of Kabul. And this is one way to make sure we have enough flight capacity to move people from those places to their ultimate destinations.
Job one, of course, is getting Americans through Taliban checkpoints and to the airport. Here's what President Biden said on Friday.
We have no indication that they haven't been able to get in Kabul through the airport. We've made an agreement with the Taliban thus far. They've allowed them to go through.
But yesterday, the U.S. Embassy in Kabul issued this alert. Because of potential security threats outside the gates at the Kabul airport, we are advising U.S. citizens to avoid traveling to the airport unless you receive individual instructions from a U.S. government representative to do so. That alert directly contradicts what President Biden said just hours before on Friday. My question is that because the situation in getting to the airport, even for Americans, is more dangerous than the president indicated, or is it because of a reported new threat from ISIS?
Chris, here's what we've seen over the last week at the airport. Crowds have massed at the gates outside the airport. It's an incredibly volatile situation. It's an incredibly fluid situation. We've seen wrenching images of people hurt, even killed, that hit you in the gut. And it's very important to make sure, to the best of our ability, because it's such a volatile situation, that we do something about the crowding at the gates of the airport. And that's exactly what we're doing. First, the more we move people out of the airport who are already in, the more we alleviate what has been overcrowding inside the airport, the more we can get people inside the airport and reduce some of the crowding at the gates. But second and most important, we're in direct contact with Americans and others to help guide them to the airport, right place, right time, to get in more safely and effectively. And at the same time, as we were talking about a few minutes ago, we now have in place agreements with, as I said, more than 24 countries, so that as we're moving people out of Kabul, we're moving them to places where we can finish processing them, finish doing security checks, and that too will make things run more smoothly. It'll get the flow to a point where we hope and expect that some of these scenes of overcrowding, which are so dangerous, can be alleviated.
I want to pick up on another aspect of the evacuation. We know of one instance where the U.S. sent 3 Chinook helicopters out to a hotel near the airport to pick up 169 Americans and bring them back into the airport. Have there been other instances where the U.S. has gone outside the perimeter of Kabul airport to pick up Americans either in Kabul or around the country? And are we prepared to do more of that?
Chris, the President, Secretary of Defense have been very clear that we will do what is necessary to get Americans who want to leave out of harm's way and get them home. And that is an ongoing effort. I'll leave it to the Secretary of Defense and others to speak to how we would go about doing that. But our focus now, what the State Department is focused on, in very close coordination with the Department of Defense and all of our other colleagues, is directing people with whom we're in direct contact as to the best way to get to the airport, get through the gates, get onto planes. That's the safest and most effective way to do it.
In addition to the question of the security and the ease of Americans getting to the airport, the president on Friday said a few other things that were flat wrong, Mr. Secretary. Here he is on the threat from Al-Qaeda.
What interest do we have in Afghanistan at this point with Al-Qaeda gone?
But a UN report this summer says that Al-Qaeda is present in 15 of the 34 provinces of Afghanistan. And General Milley said this summer that if the Taliban fell, that he was, or rather took over Kabul, that he was going to have to upgrade the terror threat from Al-Qaeda. What the president said just wasn't true.
Chris, step back for 1 second. First, as we all know, we went to Afghanistan 20 years ago with one mission and one purpose in mind. And that was to deal with the folks who attacked us on 9/11, to bring bin Laden to justice, which we did a decade ago, and to diminish the capacity of Al-Qaeda to do the same thing again, to attack us from Afghanistan. And that, to the president's point, has been successful. We got bin Laden a decade ago.
But
and
Mr. Secretary, the president
Please.
said Al-Qaeda is gone. Simple question: is Al-Qaeda gone from Afghanistan?
Al-Qaeda's capacity to do what it did on 9/11, to attack us, to attack our partners or allies from Afghanistan, is vastly, vastly diminished.
Is it gone?
Are there Al-Qaeda members and remnants in Afghanistan? Yes, but what the president was referring to was its capacity to do what it did on 9/11, and that capacity has been very successfully diminished.
Thank you there to Chris.
Sure.
Getting back on air there. Do apologise for that. That was his interview there with Anthony Blinken. And Zach, what did you take away from that short little clip of that interview with Anthony Blinken?
Yeah, he was pretty good, wasn't he? Chris Wallace was. Especially the bit where he grilled Blinken was saying, is ISIS operating in Al-Qaeda, operating out in Afghanistan? Then Blinken went sort of, well, they don't really have the capacity to, but he didn't really directly answer the question. So, and I like that he said, oh, this is plain wrong. He's got the facts in front of him, and that's good. I always like a facts-first journalist. Let's just say that. Not a partisan one, a fact-first journalist. And that's what's good about Chris Wallace. He's probably one of the only decent journalists Fox News has at that channel.
I have to say, Zach, as well, he sounds like a ferocious political interviewer, doesn't he?
He does. Absolutely, Charlie. He absolutely does.
That's one of the things when you get a news channel that's got a journalist like that who holds people to account. That really does grill politicians, because politicians have to have answers. And I've seen some interviews where it's like all gone wrong and stuff like that. But Chris Wallace, for me, because of his years of experience, I mean, he started out many years ago. When he was a teenager, he was doing election coverage in, say, the 60s or the 60s. And now to see him on Fox News, he's gone through a big career, Zach, hasn't he, Chris Wallace?
He has, certainly has. It's quite a career for him, covering President Ronald Reagan in the past, to be, their chief political anchor, these days, and still going strong, may I add as well. Still going strong.
Yeah, certainly very interesting to see Chris Wallace out there on such issues. But before I finish, I just want to say quickly to people watching this show that it's important to understand that no matter what political party you are, no matter who you are, no matter what political party you're from, you're always going to get grilled on interviews, because interviews cover a wide variety of issues It can be issues like, for example, spending. It could be issues on Afghanistan. All the journalists that will ask questions about the latest news stories. But the thing is, with people like Andrew Neil and Chris Wallace, they do their interviews in a way that is very unique to broadcasting. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah. In UK, you have Andrew Neil, a unique broadcaster, a unique a unique interview in the same way I think Chris Wallace is as well. And you've got some outstanding journalists there in America, outside the partisan, liberal, conservative talk show hosts and stuff like that. You got like Jake Tapper, you got like Chris Wallace, as I said, George Stopolobolo, whatever his last name is. His last name is a mess, but oh my god, he's a good journalist. So despite the fact that sometimes the media in America can be biased towards one side quite easily because they're relaxed rules, you still have very balanced, fine journalists that will do the work for either side, and any politician who comes into their path is not going to get away with it.
Yeah, so please, guys, comment down below what you think about this. Do you think Chris Wallace and Andrew Neil have similarities between each other? Please comment down below. But we're just going to finish off with one more quick segment, which is a quick segment on GB News whilst we're here, because there has been big news. Obviously, Zach, Alistair Stewart returned over the weekend to host his show. What did you make of Alistair Stewart's shows this weekend on the station?
Good to see Alistair Stewart back. I have to say, obviously he's suffered a hip injury through his horse riding accident a couple of weeks ago, but he's in full fitness and health now. He's back on screen. I see there's some new shows launching it next week, Charlie. Not this week, but next Saturday, Sunday. There's a new sports show starting at 9 from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. Saturday and Sunday, where they're going to be doing the sports news on there. In September, Andrew Neil's supposed to return. From the 6th of September is the date. Also, I should add as well, Charlie, this week, Alistair Stewart is covering Andrew Neil. Not Colin. Obviously, Colin Bray's got the week off. So Alistair Stewart is going to do the 4 days this week, which is good to see. Perfect journalist, I think, for that. If you haven't read on there already, it's Alistair Stewart covering this week. And Andrew Neil's back on the 6th. And there's going to be some new political shows launched then, and a new business show as well by Liam Halligan as well on the 6th, from the 6th as well. Charlie, some news on that as well. So yeah, some changes coming in for GB News in the next couple of weeks.
I didn't hear about any of these. I honestly, I hadn't heard. I don't know where is that on like their press release or something?
Oh no, it is. I checked Radio Time scheduling actually a couple of weeks ago. I'm going to try and get it up here actually because I think it's important to.
It's an interesting one because I haven't heard anything about the new shows, and I honestly didn't know there was going to be some restructuring done.
Yeah, so this upcoming Saturday and Sunday, there's going to be a new show called GB Sports. That's an hour show looking at all the sports news, and then I believe there is also going to be as well. Let me get up here as well. I think it's important to show. As you are probably aware, there's obviously new political shows coming from the 6th of September called The Briefing, which is obviously going to be the Westminster developments for half an hour. The Briefing lunchtime is going to be on at 12 to 1 every day from the 6th as well. Also a new business show called On the Money. GB News, Liam Halligan's going to be doing that. It's all economics, business, consumer news. Means the period Halligan's moving to 1:30 to 3:30. And then the Briefing PM as well is also as well.
Darren McCaffrey's on that one.
Yeah, Darren McCaffrey. But that's the changes are happening as well, Charlie. From the 6th of September. And as I said, well, GB Sports starts Saturday at 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. on Saturdays. And
Who's presenting that show?
I believe there is a presenter. Let me get up on my TV guide because it starts next Saturday as well. I believe I read. I know who this person is. I believe. Rhiannon Jones, could be presenting GB Sports. She's a presenter on CNN World Sports. And at the moment, Charlie, and she's going to be on GB News as well from Saturdays and Sundays 9 to 10. It's a presenter you probably haven't heard about,
No.
but she's doing the station next week.
Oh, great. So from the 6th of September, it seems like it's a big, I mean, Zach, this is a big change for them. They seem like now they're going, that when they launched, they had a small selection of shows, but they seem like now this is a big official launch for the station. It's now they're starting now to invest a lot in more content. Do you think this is a good idea for them?
I think so. Certainly the sports thing is interesting. Sports is watched a lot by the UK. I think as well the business is probably very important as well. And I think, business getting Liam Halligan to do it is probably the perfect person for doing it, really, to be honest. And the briefing ones, obviously they want to focus on people outside of politics, but I suppose the briefing could look into Westminster and how it affects, other regions, hopefully. So I hope they go into that sort of segment. But I suppose not a bad development, I have to say, as well, Charlie, on that front.
My only fear is that with my final point before I finish, Zach, is Colin Brazier, because if Andrew Neil comes back on his show on the 6th, where is he going to go? Because the schedule is really packed.
Yeah, that's my key. He used to present 9 to 12, but obviously Patrick Christie's now doing his slot with Mercy Maroki. So I don't know where he's going to go, really, to be honest. We'll have to find out in the future where he ends up. Does he do weekend breakfast, maybe? We don't know. It'll be a bit of a downgrade if he ends up doing that, I think. But I suppose it wouldn't be bad if having a Colin Isabel Wosder partnership, because do you remember those are two presenters from Sky News that used to be on Sky News quite a lot, and they knew each other quite well. So that'd be a potential partnership in the future, I think. Having Colin Isabel on weekend breakfast together, I think that'd be a strong partnership.
Great British Breakfast. I could see him doing a Great British Breakfast. I think he could be good on there. You got Simon McCoy on Monday and Thursday.
Yeah, he could do it I suppose he could do it on the weekend, or Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I know Nanu Okoku is doing Friday Great British Breakfast. He could, it could be Colin on the Friday, Saturday, and Sunday with Nanu, and Saturday and Sunday with Isabel. That's my.
I don't know. It's going to be interesting.
I don't know what's
going to be interesting to see the future of GB News. But all I can say is the news shows, I believe, launch. Zach, when do they launch? Is it 6th of September? Just to confirm.
The GB Sports shows is launching this Saturday and Sunday. So but the rest of the news shows are going to be on the 6th onwards.
Yeah. 6th onwards, just to confirm the rest of the shows. And also as well, there will be a Wednesday, the briefing PMQs as well is going to be on.
Yeah, they're going to show that live, I believe, as well on Wednesdays. Yeah, so that's the plan there.
That's for Prime Minister's questions. There'll be some political coverage on that. But yes, guys, GB News, great to see the station investing in more content. I like it. That makes this will be a big draw for them. And let's hope that in the next week or so, we will see more listeners tuning in to watch the station. But all I can say, guys, is that brings us to the end of the Charlie Tolhurst show tonight. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. And we'll see you again next week for another show. And also, if you're sending your kids back to school, I hope you guys enjoy that this week. And I hope every kid that's going back to school this week, I hope you have a really good education. See you later, everyone. Take care and good night.